Did you know Muhammad was a member of the LGBTQ community? Yes, the Muhammad, the so-called prophet of Islam. Now, I know you think this sounds crazy, but for Pride Month, I thought this would be the best time to share a story about Muhammad that highlights his LGBTQ lifestyle. And this story is a story of Muhammad and the men of Al-Zut. This comes from the Musnad al-Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, Volume 3, page 399, Hadith number 3788. And I will post a link for this Hadith in the description of the video for anyone who thinks I'm just making this story up. And also, you'll see that this Hadith is rated Sahih, so it's good as gold. So with all that, let's get into it. This Hadith starts off by saying, Abdullah ibn Masud related, the Messenger of Allah sent for me, so we set out until I reached such and such a place. And he traced a line for me and told me, stay between the two edges of this. Don't go outside of it. If you go outside of it, it's over for you. So Muhammad and Abdullah ibn Masud are going to some place, but Abdullah is not allowed to go across this line that Muhammad placed for him. Whatever is past this line must be pretty significant since Muhammad sternly warns him not to pass the line. So then it goes on to say, Abdullah said, and so I stayed there. Then the Messenger of Allah went off a stone's throw away, or a little farther. Then he, Abdullah, mentioned a group of male members who looked like Zut people. Afan narrated, they didn't have any clothes on, and I didn't see their genitals, and they were tall and scrawny. So now Muhammad goes off into the distance, and there are people who look like the Zut people, who were likely from India or modern-day Pakistan, who were known to be dark-skinned men who were tall, lean, and were also known for their sexual vitality and male genitalia that never went limp. So then the question comes to mind, what was Muhammad doing with these men of Al-Zut? Well, the story goes on to say that he, Abdullah, said, and they came and started to ride the Messenger of Allah, and the Prophet of Allah began to recite to them. So these men of Al-Zut, who were tall, lean men who were known for their sexual vitality, were riding Muhammad, and the word for riding is yarkabun, which literally means to ride or mount, but also carries along a slang connotation like it does in English that alludes to sexual intercourse. So unless these men were riding around on Muhammad like a donkey, it seems like they were riding Muhammad sexually, especially given the nature of these men and what they were known for. And this is even more evident in Abdullah's reaction to these men, where he said, and they started to move closer and lean around me and get in my way, and I became intensely terrified of them, so I sat down. So when the men got closer to him, his initial response was to sit down. Now, that is a strange reaction unless he saw what was happening to his prophet's backside and didn't want the same thing to happen to him from these men. Then the story concludes with this, and when the morning light broke, they began to go away. Then the Messenger of Allah came back exhausted and in pain, or practically in pain, from how they had ridden him. He said, indeed, I am exhausted. Then the Messenger of Allah put his head in my lap, and the men came with tall white garments on, but the Messenger of Allah had fallen asleep, and I became more intensely terrified of them than I was the first time. So Muhammad was so exhausted and in pain from how these men had ridden him all night that he passed out on Abdullah's lap. Now, I don't know about you, but it sounds to me that Muhammad went out into the Arabian desert to have a late-night rendezvous with the men of Al-Zut and wanted his companion Abdullah ibn Masud to watch as these men were riding him all night long. And they rode him so much so that he was in pain, so then he rested on the lap of his companion from the exhaustion of this sexual endeavor. And with all that, this leads me to believe that Muhammad was a member of the LGBTQ community, given what he participated in with the men of Al-Zut. Now, there have been some that suggested that the men weren't men, but they were rather angels or jinn. Now, this is highly unlikely given the nature of the event. It seems like it had to have been of human interaction, but honestly, whether it was men or jinn, the fact remains that these men or jinn rode Muhammad all night long in a sexual manner that would qualify Muhammad to be part of the LGBTQ community, and therefore a representative of Pride Month. So, for anyone who celebrates Pride Month, make sure you make this story known about Muhammad so people get to know Muhammad as the proud LGBTQ community member that he is.
All night long.